Welcome to this Reality Report special investigation. I'm Julio Rauseo. I'm speaking today with Wayne Madsen via video Skype link in Washington, D.C. Wayne Madsen is a Washington, D.C. based investigative journalist. He's a frequent contributor on Russia Today, BBC, CNN, and ABC, just to name a few. 20 years of security experience as a naval officer. He's also worked with the Department of State and the NSA, the National Security Agency. Wayne is also a member of the Society for Professional Journalists and the National Press Club. Wayne Madsen, thank you so much for joining us live from D.C.
Hi, good to be with you today.
Good to be with you, too. In this special investigation, we'll be dealing with Rahm Emanuel, who's getting set to run for mayor of the city of Chicago. But Wayne, you came to the city of Chicago in the summer of 2010 during the heat of the Rod Blagojevich trial. What made you come down to Chicago in the midst of the Blago trial?
Well, I've been following ex-Governor Blagojevich's chief tormentor, Patrick Fitzgerald, for a number of years, ever since Fitzgerald was working in the U.S. Attorney's Office for the Southern District of Manhattan, specifically on the World Trade Center bombing in 1993. And Fitzgerald, in that case, along with his cohort in crime, and I do say crime because evidence of that particular crime was covered up by Fitzgerald and his cohort, who was the U.S. Attorney for the Northern District of New Jersey, one guy named Michael Chertoff, who came back to haunt us again. But it was very clear that in 1993, critical evidence was suppressed by Fitzgerald and Chertoff, evidence that would have led to the government of Sudan, which at the time was harboring a guy named Osama bin Laden. But the problem was to pin 93 World Trade Center bombing on bin Laden would have been to implicate the CIA, because up until 1995, bin Laden was still on the payroll of the CIA and Britain's MI6. So we have in Fitzgerald somebody who's very much wired in with the intelligence community, who's done their bidding for a number of years, who is not a clean prosecutor. He's extremely dirty. He's not Elliot Ness. He's more like Al Capone.
Well, that fits right into Chicago. And you mentioned in your May 19th article on WayneMadsenReport.com just about you coming into Chicago. And you also mentioned that President Barack Obama and Rahm Emanuel, along with Patrick Fitzgerald, had a pro-quo agreement. Can you discuss about that agreement?
Well, it's very obvious that Fitzgerald is carrying the water for Obama and Emanuel. The whole takedown of Rod Blagojevich had to do with eliminating a potential bothersome witness to the rise of Obama and also of Emanuel in Illinois politics, especially Obama, who became president of the United States from basically a career as an Illinois state senator, a career of relative obscurity, but a career nevertheless that seemed to show that Obama had friends in high places. After all, from 2002, when he was defeated in the primary by Congressman Bobby Rush, Obama had this mercurial rise in national politics from the time he defeated his opponent in the race for the U.S. Senate in 2004 to the meltdown of Jack Ryan, the Republican candidate for Senate, over released divorce papers that were supposedly sealed about a very messy divorce, to the White House. We see in Obama somebody who's risen, along with people like Emanuel, and I think the reason for that is that there's been protection of Obama and Emanuel by people like Patrick Fitzgerald, who, after all, we have to look at his own background. His father was a doorman for the wealthy elite in the upper east side of Manhattan, and his son, Patrick Fitzgerald, continues to be not only a doorman, but a doormat for these same vested interests.
Now, there were 500 hours of wiretapped phone conversations between Rod Blagojevich, but somehow not all the 500 hours were released. As we continue in our special investigation, we'll figure out some reasons why those wiretaps weren't released. But why do you think, Wayne, Patrick Fitzgerald would team up with Obama and Emanuel to try to take out Rod Blagojevich? It seems like he is the middleman that knows too much, and they're trying to silence him.
Oh, it's absolutely the case. And Fitzgerald, of course, is just nothing more than he's a water carrier for the elites, for the people that put Obama in power now are behind trying to put Emanuel in as mayor of Chicago, possibly with future national ambitions beyond being mayor. But we look at the 500 hours of wiretaps. It's quite clear that we know that Governor Blagojevich has a salty way of speaking. That's not why he was indicted. If that were a crime, Richard Nixon would have been impeached years before Watergate. But what this is has to do with selective prosecution, something that Fitzgerald masters in. We saw it in his indictment of former Governor George Ryan. Very selective, because Ryan commuted those death sentences and cited police and prosecutorial misconduct in Chicago and in the state of Illinois. And who was Ryan talking about? He was talking about Fitzgerald's good buddies in the cop shops around the state, including Chicago, and the prosecutors' offices. These people have a way of getting back at you when you go after their vested interests. So what we have in Blagojevich, there were references in some of these phone calls that would have been of great interest to the jury, but the judge, Judge James Zagel, who's a very political judge and who will be the same judge in the retrial of Blagojevich this spring, when in fact there should be a change of venue, at least a change of the trial judge, but we don't see anything coming down from the Justice Department on that, because Eric Holder, the Attorney General, is every bit as much of a political lickspittle for these vested interests as is Patrick Fitzgerald. So any references between, say, Blagojevich and Rahm Emanuel and other of these players about Rahm Emanuel and Barack Obama's extracurricular activities, which are long-standing in Chicago, were kept from the jury because, of course, the judge said a lot of this, and of course Fitzgerald agreed with this and pushed this, that this has no bearing on the case. Well, I think the fact that the President of the United States and a guy that hopes to be the next mayor of Chicago were members of the same gay bathhouse in North Chicago are very relevant to the case against Blagojevich, because again, this is eliminating somebody who knows way too much to shift the attention off of those who are probably just as corrupt, if not more corrupt, than the accusations against Blagojevich, and that's Obama and Emanuel.
And we'll get to those extracurricular activities in a second. It's also good to point out that the voters of Chicago should know this type of information before voting for a mayor of one of the largest cities in the country, the third largest media market in all the country. The voters need to know this type of information. Rahm Emanuel getting set to be to run for mayor of Chicago. Not many people around the city that are educated enough know about Emanuel and his entire family. They're a very powerful family, the Emanuels, including his two brothers. His father has shady past. Can you go in length about the Emanuel family and their rise to power?
Yeah, the Emanuels are basically Emanuel's parents emigrated. Well,